Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jimmy Connor, and I'm with Bloor Street Capital, a corporate access firm based in Toronto. I work with a lot of big cap stocks and a lot of small cap stocks. And when it comes to small caps, people are always asking me for the next multi-bagger. And when identifying companies that can do that, I look for three elements. I'm focused on the right asset and the right jurisdiction with the right management team. And I believe we have a company that fits that profile today in Core Mining. Core Mining has 4 gold properties, 2 in the state of California, 2 in the province of British Columbia. We have 2 strategic shareholders in Eric Sprott and also Macquarie Bank. And the board and the management together own 41%. Core trades on the TSXV under the symbol of KORE and on the OTC under the symbol KOREF. Core has 106 million shares outstanding and its market cap is $70 million. I want to make this presentation short, try to keep it under 45 minutes, and I want to make it informative. So in order to do that, I'm going to be asking the questions. A number of attendees have already submitted questions. I'm going to be asking those throughout the presentation. If you would like to submit some questions during the presentation, by all means, shoot me an email at info@bloorstreetcapital.com, info@bloorstreetcapital.com. If we don't get a chance to answer your questions, I'll make sure Scott or another member of his team reaches out to you. And if you would like to have a more detailed discussion with Scott, let me know and I will set that up. So I'm very happy to introduce you to Scott Chubbucock, President and CEO of Core Mining. Scott, before you begin your official presentation, why don't you just take a few moments to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Core Mining.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. First, thanks for having me. Thanks everyone out there for taking some time to hear about Core Mining. I joined Core 10 months ago as CEO. I wanted to be part of a company that had, real advanced assets and that I could be a significant owner. And I found that in Core Mining. Prior to that, I spent 9 years building up and getting Nevsun Resources sold. That sold for 1.8 billion Canadian in late 2018. Prior to that, process engineer and, spent a good part of my 25 years in business in the mining sector. And I'm super excited to be leading Core. I'll dive right into the slides, and Jimmy, just dive right in and ask me questions as we go through to bring up things you see that investors and your clients want to hear about. I'm going to make some forward-looking statements. I encourage anybody who gets interest in Core from this presentation to go look at it, read our website, go to CDAR, look at our financial disclosures, read about the risks, and understand the company well before making any investment decisions. As Jimmy said, Core has a total of 4.9 million ounces of gold spread across 3 projects in British Columbia and California. The strategy of the company is to pursue both development and exploration investment, so taking capital and investing in both those pathways to create value for our shareholders. So, the moniker we put on the front page of this deck, a North American gold developer and explorer, is true. We think we've got some incredible opportunities to generate value with the drill bit, and we'll talk a little bit about that near the end of the presentation. We plan to drill across our resources this year, as well as in parallel to that, we've got this great Imperial project I'll spend time on, where we've got a PEA and we're pushing the project towards building a mine. The cap structure of the company reflects the relatively young nature of the company. We went public by a reverse takeover of a junior that had the BC assets in November of 2018, but we didn't raise any significant capital in the company until Macquarie Bank came in May of last year. So the company's been capitalized for about a year. We've done 2 rounds of financing with our strategic investors, Macquarie Bank and Eric Sprott. And Macquarie Bank and Eric Sprott are an interesting combination because they each validate the 2 paths to value creation. Macquarie Bank did 6 months of due diligence, external consultants, the questions and data room and CAs and all of the things that go along with a conservative investor. And they bought a royalty, a right to finance, and equity in Core, focused purely on bringing the Imperial project forward and into production. And they, as a bank, would ultimately like to lend money to construct that project. And clearly that's a very strong signal that they believe Imperial will be a mine in the near term. On the flip side, you have Eric Sprott, who loves the juice you get in equities from exploration. He loves ounces in the ground. And you see those two counterbalances really validating our strategy to continue to aggressively explore and generate news flow while we pursue development at Imperial. Company currently, at the close of the Macquarie and Eric financing a couple of weeks ago, had about $5 million in the bank. And I'll talk about how we're going to spend that going forward. We have recently seen an uptick in interest in the Toronto street. We just saw earlier this week, Nick Dion from Cormark Securities came out with a buy recommendation and a full coverage note on the company. He's got a $1.30 target on the company, so that's great to see someone stretching out there. And even in his metrics, the company still looks very, very reasonably priced at $1.30. So we got a long way to go to get to up to peer values. We're also followed by Ryan Walker at Echelon, Ryan Hanley at Laurentian. We're on the takeout 20 at Paradigm Capital, and we pop up regularly in Huffman and the Scoop and the sales notes that come out of PI. So I think we've got some really good growing street following that should help us keep building out the cap structure as we go forward.
And Scott, I just want to make a comment on that Cormark report. I have a copy of that. If anybody wants the report, let me know. I will send it to them. Shoot me an email, info@bloorstreetcapital.com. It was very well done. It's like 30 pages, very detailed. One question about Eric Sprott, Scott. I'm kind of curious about what type of shareholder he is. Is he passive? Is he active? Do you speak to him on a regular basis?
Yeah. That's a great question. I describe Eric as, I would never describe Eric as passive, but he's not, demanding we do things or, participating in board level discussions. He is very much just a large equity holder, and he wants to see management do their jobs, deploy his capital, make some new discoveries, generate some great drill holes, and create excitement in the equity so he can see his price appreciate. But we do talk to him regularly. We're in contact with himself probably at least once a quarter. And then, certainly with his staff and his key guy there, Connor, on a more regular basis. So active and interested, but certainly not, making demands of what we do and how we spend his capital.
And one other point I want to make, management and the board own 41%. You don't see that too often. For those who don't know, the stock's had a big move here in the last few months. It's gone from 20 cents up to 70 cents. Might be a little bit lower today, but is there any threat about any members of the board or any members of the management team selling stock at these elevated levels?
Yeah, no way. I mean, I guess my first comment is I think you'll see as we go through this presentation that while we finally saw some interest, now the 20 cents you quoted was on, I call it the COVID-19 bottom. We were trading prior to that in, at least 30, sometimes, up to 40 cents. So we have seen some recovery. Since that 20 cents, we've put out a PEA, we've put out 4 exploration news releases. And, while 70 cents is up from the bottom and those that timed well have made money, we're certainly far from reaching peer valuation. So I'd say we got a long way to go. So no, I don't think anybody the insiders in the company think the company is fairly valued to take money off the table yet. We did help Adrian Rothwell, one of the founders, who I'll talk about on the next slide, get off some shares because he's starting a new company called Lucky Minerals. And he needed some capital, so we, constructed a cross and got our first institutional position. But there are no more sellers in management and the board. In fact, insiders and strategic shareholders have been increasing their positions quite regularly. I bought some stock as frequently as about 4 weeks ago.
Great. You just bought it in the open market?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I get a little extra cash kicking around. Now tax season's over and the bills are paid. We'll see if we can wade in there again and pick up some more shares.
Okay. And just in case anybody missed it, they're sitting on $5 million in cash. You can see that in the bottom left.
All right. So getting into, one of your key points at the beginning, Jimmy, was the people behind the company. It's part of the reason, again, that I joined Core. I thought it was I really got along well with James Hines, the founder of the company. He owns about 25% of the equity. Made most of his fortune in the aggregates business in Alberta. Basically finding and developing aggregate deposits for the oil sands construction industry. Clearly, that is not a great business to be in right now. So he cashed out and moved to Vancouver and started Core along with Adrian Rothwell. Adrian was had just come out of a Gold Corp and was in the right place to assist with the acquisition of our flagship Imperial project. So, those two did a great job getting Core going. I'm happy to take the reins and go forward. One of the key executives I brought in was Mark Leduc. Mark's very well known in the capital markets circles. He's been the CEO of a couple juniors. He's worked at Barrick building mines, and he spent his entire career building heap leach mines around the world, some of them in the United States. And most importantly, he recently did the Castle Mountain project for Richard Wark and Newcastle Gold. He configured that project so that a big company could come in and buy it and deliver value and move the project forward. We asked Mark to come do the same thing for us, in that he's got California permitting experience. He's a heap leach guy, and he's the perfect guy to take Imperial forward and de-risk it and move it towards production. Then we've got Harry, Don, and Brendan, our independent directors, a couple mining CEOs, and then Harry, an ex-banker. So I think we got the foundations of a great board here, and I'm really excited about the team. So let me dive a little bit into the assets. I mean, a picture say 1,000 words. You're looking at, in the background of this slide, where we would be building the heap leach pads for the Imperial project. So clearly an easy place to construct. That means you have very predictable costs. So we're very confident that we can deliver this incredible PEA we put out 6 weeks ago. So it shows a mine that's going to produce about 150,000 ounces a year, a great IRR, low pre-production CapEx. And this project stands tall for North American development projects, particularly the US gold projects in Idaho and Nevada. Core is got a great amount of production, stands side by side in amount of total gold and annual gold with Integra, Gold Standard, Liberty, slightly smaller than Corvus, but lower capital intensity. So this is a project someone's going to want to build. You can get cheap ounces out of the ground simply because the project is a simple run-of-mine heap leach on a flat location in a mining experienced mining jurisdiction.
Scott, do you mind going back to slide 8? I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
First of all, the 143 million, someone is asking, how confident are you in that number? And the follow-up question is, how are you going to finance that?
Yeah, great questions. So we're very confident in our capital estimates. I actually think I have let's see if I included it in here. I did include a capital breakdown. Nope, I didn't put that slide in. Anyway, so Mark Leduc, like I said, he just did the Castle Mountain project, which was bought by Equinox. So he's got very recent cost. He also helped them run the Mesquite mine for a little while, which means in this part of the world, in the southern deserts in the United States, you've got access to a huge array of contractors that service both the Nevada, Arizona, and California mining sector. So you have a very, very good idea what everything costs. And as a result, we're very confident in the capital cost estimates, and we're very confident, more importantly, because it has greater sensitivity to the returns to the operating cost. And with Mesquite, a very similar sized run-of-mine heap leach mine 9 miles away, you can know exactly how much to almost the penny it costs to run a dump truck uphill and downhill, loaded and empty. So we're very confident in our costs. As far as financing, we've got Macquarie standing by with a right of first offer and right of first refusal for project finance. We've also got a large part of that capital. The pre-production capital is also mine fleet, which you can lease. We can bring that capital hurdle down very significantly, where Core probably needs well under 100, maybe under $75 million in capital to bring the mine into production. And, with a $343 million NAV and the great exploration upside, I think by the time we get a permit on this thing, we'll be a multi-$100 million company. It'll be a very low hurdle to finance.
Very good, thank you.
Yep. As far as trading, you saw the Cormark report. I think they had the company trading at about a 0.2, I think 0.2 something, 0.2 and change net asset value in their numbers, and their numbers were financed. On an unfinanced basis, if you compare our project to our peers, which we consider our peers to be, Integra, Liberty, Gold Standard, and Midas, Core looks very cheap on a value, and that's when you put zero value for the exploration we're going to talk about here. So I think by getting out there, getting the shares trading better, which we're starting to see, getting support from the capital markets, increasing the flow to the company, you're going to see a great story here to create value by delivering news flow. And that's the key thing. We're going to keep exciting in this story by generating a lot of news flow in the quarters and years to come. Now, the flagship project with that PEA is located in Imperial County. Imperial County is an experienced mining jurisdiction. It hosts the Mesquite mine I mentioned earlier, which is about 9 miles down the road, hosts a large US gypsum open pit mine and wallboard plant. And historically in the 80s, there were 4 open pit, heap leach projects. So generations of Imperial County people have grown and raised their families on being service providers and employees at the mines. And we think that's great motivation why we're going to have a supportive county to get behind us as we move this project into and through permitting. Unfortunately, Imperial County is facing 15% and growing unemployment because of historic economic depression and COVID. And we think that's just going to add further tailwinds for, proposing a new responsible industrial operation in the county.
And Scott, just going back to that last slide on Mesquite, just remind us again, how long have they been producing and how many ounces have they produced?
Yeah, great point. So Mesquite was built in, I think, 1986 by Gold Fields. It's operated pretty much continuously now for 25 years, produced over 7 million ounces of gold to date. So it's a series of deposits. So obviously a very large deposit and camp in the scheme of mines in the world. It's currently owned by Equinox Gold, and for Equinox, there's only a couple of years of reserves left. They put out a reserve statement update just a couple of weeks back, which didn't show any growth. So I think Western Mesquite employees are fearing for their jobs in the years to come. And I think again that's another great reason they're going to be supportive of proposing a new mine down the road.
Right. And how many people work at that mine?
There's somewhere close to 400. Full-time staff plus contractors, so it's a big contributor of taxes and economic spin-off in the county. Just getting through a few more slides. So the deposit itself it actually outcrops its surface. We would have ore in the first bench, so there's no pre-stripping. We're mining in the mine plan about 1.5 million ounces of the 2.2 million defined in the resources, and it's metallurgically very simple. It's 100% oxidized and has very good metallurgy. On the project, we also have close access to power, roads, labor pool, and we even have a water well on site with monitoring wells that were previously used to generate a hydrogeologic model. The water levels, despite Mesquite drawing on this aquifer for 25 years for their water, is still at the same levels when those wells were originally put in the 90s. So we think we've got a well-charged large aquifer to provide water, which checks all the boxes for everything you need for a mine in the desert.
Hey, Scott, just going back to slide 13, somebody was asking about your leach recoveries.
Yeah, actually, that's a great question because that's actually an opportunity. So in the, when GRE did the engineering design for the PEA, obviously we did a couple sensitivity cases, and one of the cases we did included crushing. So Core is currently planning a run of mine operation. That means you drill and blast the rock, put it in a truck, take it, dump it on the heap leach pad and irrigate it to leach the gold. There is an opportunity to crush the rock between the truck and the pad and actually increase the recovery. So we're forecasting 73% recovery from run of mine, but we believe we can get that recovery up to 78 to 80% with crushing. And certainly the case for that gets stronger at higher gold prices like we see now. A larger company would almost 100% put in a crusher. But for Core, we wanted the lowest CapEx number to make the project most achievable for a company of our size. But a logical larger operator would put a crusher in and get probably closer to 80%.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Just a quick slide to show you the comparison of Mesquite versus Imperial operating costs. This just gets to my point that we're very confident in the operating costs that we have, and they are the largest sensitivity other than metal price in the economics. So we believe we can deliver these costs and therefore deliver the $851 all-in sustaining cost that's estimated for this operation. And just a key note on the all-in sustaining cost, that includes the closure cost at this site, which is a key component of being able to get social license to operate in California, because that closure cost includes backfilling. And Core plans to be fully compliant with backfilling the project in California, which makes us subject to the highest reclamation standards on the planet. And we're really excited to do that because it makes the project defensible and eases our path through permitting.
So maybe can you just explain to the some members of the audience what backfilling is, please? And maybe somebody was asking too, how much does it contribute to that all-in sustaining cost of $851?
Yeah, so the backfilling, I think, contributes $108 per ounce produced, because it costs somewhere close to, I can't remember the exact number, something around 100 million to backfill. Backfilling simply means when you dig a hole in the ground, you move your material out, including waste and ore, you do all your processing, you have to refill the hole in the ground, because California doesn't want the eyesore or pit lakes or whatever would be left over from a mine. So in the part of the reclamation is we will backfill. Now, a majority of the backfilling actually happens during operations, because it's natural to take material you're mining and backfill a part of the mine that you've already fully mined out. And most of the mine is backfilled through that process. And then we go through the closure process to backfill the rest. And then, we leave the site once it's revegetated, literally plus minus 25 feet original topography, like we were never there. How can you ask for a better story for an NGO that doesn't necessarily like mining? And I think that will pave the way for a cleaner and smoother process through permitting, is that very, very high standard in cost, which, we can absorb down to, probably $1,000 or $1,100 gold. We can still afford all that backfilling and still have good economics.
Is California the only state that has that backfilling law, or are there other states?
Yes, that I'm aware of. It's the only state, and I think one of the only places in the world that has mandatory backfilling for all metallic open pit mines that are newly permitted, correct? So it's great. Like, when you can stand in front of your stakeholders and say, we're going to live to this incredibly high standard, it gives people, great confidence in the responsibility of the operation, and therefore doesn't give a lot of pride points for people that, might want to cause difficulties during the permitting process. So, the only reason, just talking about permitting, the only reason we have this project is because of backfilling. Backfilling rendered the project uneconomic for Glamis Gold when that law was implemented in 2002, because gold was only $300 an ounce, and you can't afford to backfill when gold's $300 an ounce. And today, when gold is, as I said, 11 or 1,200 or anywhere up to where it is today, you can afford to backfill, because backfilling is just a cost. It's not some of the other intractable problems that you get in permitting mines, such as metallurgy and social license to operate. And we with a supportive county that already has a long history of gold mining and an active gold mine, I think we got a good shot at keeping to our permitting timeline, which is to get 2 years to get a record of decision from the Bureau of Land Management, which is our key regulator.
So Scott, seeing how we're on this topic, I just got another question from one of the attendees. I'm just going to read it because it has to do with the environment. Getting a project up and running in California, can you have him discuss the potential environmental regulations, headwinds to developing a mine? So backfilling would be one. What else?
Yeah, you clearly have to meet. California has stringent, rules across the board, whether it's labor, water, air. You're subject to all of the very high standards in California. And like Mesquite does, we can obviously adhere and meet all of the requirements for labor. Because it's a heap leach mine, there's no water discharge. It only uses and even then, a relatively small amount of water from, a very large aquifer. So we've got access to water. So you got to permit water. That's one thing. You've got to permit dust. Dust and air pollution is a big deal in Imperial County, because they've got this, issues with agricultural, environmental pollution, as well as pollution from the Salton Sea up to the north. So, Mesquite is actually capped on their annual rate of dust production. And, as we're operating at a smaller rate than Imperial, and with Imperial heading towards lower activity in the future, there'll be room in the county for our, emissions. So I don't think there's any barriers environmentally, other than the positive, which is we adhere to probably the most stringent standards in the world on a lot of fronts by operating in California. So to me, it's all a big positive. Let me, just in the interest of time, let me keep plowing through, because what we just talked about was really one of our two pathways to creating value, and that was development. The next step for Imperial is we're going to take that PEA mine plan, create what's called a plan of operations, We submit that to the Bureau of Land Management, and that kicks off our EIS and public review process, which we are predicting will take 2 years to get a record of decision, from the Bureau of Land Management. So that process will start. In parallel with that, Core has this great portfolio of assets where we've got opportunities to go out and make new discoveries, add more ounces to the balance sheet, and generate lots of news flow to keep the market excited and learn more about Core's great assets. So the first one of those opportunities is the district around Imperial, which we call the Mesquite Imperial Picacho District. It is a historic gold district controlled by Goldfields and Newmont. In that district, there are 3 known deposits, all discovered by outcrop or placer gold mining: Mesquite, Imperial, and Picacho. And we've got the benefit of having Imperial unmined because we can use geophysics to understand the electronic signatures you can see from our partially buried deposit that doesn't outcrop. That's important because the rest of this district is under sand and gravel cover. So there's no outcrop to see where there might be mineralization. We're using geophysics for the first time on the district, IP geophysics, to look for, faulting and structural controls which drive the mineralization at both Mesquite and Imperial. We found a bunch of those structures. And, if you want to take some time and go on our website and look at our news release around Imperial Regional Exploration, you'll see some of the structural targets we've got up towards Mesquite and off of the ends of Imperial. We're currently permitting drill pads to go out and test some of those targets and are mobilizing a follow-up series of IP lines and soil sampling to continue to target what we think is the potential to discover whole new Mesquites or whole new Imperials on this trend, which we have almost 20,000 acres and 28 kilometers of strike. So years of exploration and the potential to discover whole new gold deposits in this already very prolific gold belt.
So this is that slide would be a good place to ask a couple of questions here from attendees. First of all, once again, we're looking at Equinox's property in Mesquite and also where that is in relation to Imperial. So you can see they're very close together. I believe you said 10 miles. But anyhow, this person wants to know, besides Equinox, who else would want to buy Imperial or Core?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think we have had, anecdotal evidence is we've had multiple inbounds to the company and have been signing CAs for have people get to better understand the Imperial project, because we only just put out the PEA a few months ago. As we advance and de-risk Imperial and get it into permitting, I think the project would fit any mid-tier gold company already active in the United States or someone looking for growth. So that could include the Hecla's, Coeurs, America's Gold and Silver, all the way up to the North American mid-tier miners of, anyone up to kind of an Agnico size would be looking for a good solid 150,000 ounce producer. Now, I think if we are successful with the drill bit on this regional exploration and show that there's other mineralized systems and make new discoveries out on that regional ground, I think it's really going to wake people up to the potential of this camp. And I don't know. I personally think Core never gets to production. Either Equinox decides to expand its footprint around Mesquite, or another mid-tier comes in and says, "Screw Mesquite, this is a great standalone project with upside," and takes out the company. So that is one value exit path for Core shareholders as we go down this road.
And another shareholder was asking a similar question, but it has to do with the property that you recently staked. Well, I guess it was last year. Yep. Can you give us the timeline on drilling on the newly staked land in between Imperial and Mesquite?
Yeah, great question. So we're currently, application is going in like literally imminently. It might actually already be in. I haven't talked to the team this week, which is the plan of operations, which is our same terminology for permitting the mine, but in this case, it's a much quicker process to permit drill pads. We're going to be permitting a large number of drill pads that would allow us to drill both infill and step outs from the Imperial ore body. It'll also include pads both on what we call Imperial East, which is step outs for new discoveries to the east of Imperial, and then Mesquite West, which is stepping towards Imperial from Mesquite. And we'd have enough drilling to do 10 to 20,000 meters off those pads, and we're expecting a 3 to 5 month process. So we'd like to mobilize a drill contractor in the fall to start testing some of those targets. Okay, let me just keep going and just keep running in with questions. So, moving on in the exploration portfolio, we're going to move on from Imperial County, California. We're going to move up into Mono County, California, to Long Valley. I'm only going to show one slide on Long Valley, but there's a couple great news releases on this asset and information on our website if you want to learn more about it. Long Valley has, I think, over 400 drill holes put in it. It was drilled by Royal Gold in 92 to 96. Very similar story to Imperial. It was abandoned with the backfill law and low gold price in the 2000s. Core picked up the asset. No one's done any work on the project since Royal Gold. We went in, we relogged all the geologic data, all the chips and what's left over from the RC drilling. We went out and did geophysics. We took soil samples. We believe there's a good opportunity to double the size of the known oxide mineralization, which is a very thin veneer of oxide gold right at surface. It would be probably a better economics than Imperial if you did an economic study, because it's right at surface, would be a very, very, very low strip ratio ore body to get into. It's got really nice metallurgy. So it's something that we're excited about as a second asset for the company down the road. But right now the plan is, and again, we're in the permitting process for drill pads with the Forest Service. We're permitting pads to step out and test some of the oxide targets you see on this cross section, which are very, very well identified by both soil anomalies and geophysics. And we're going to run a couple of those holes long and test some of our feeder structure targets, which is looking to make new discoveries of high-grade mineralization in this underlying sulfides. Because unlike Imperial, which is simple and fully oxidized, this deposit is an intact deposit that has both oxides and sulfides. So I think it's a great exploration opportunity. We're really excited to get out there and drill. Again, very similar timeline to Imperial. We expect to have drill permits by the fall, and we'll drill whichever this project or Imperial comes first. So first come, first serve when it comes to getting the drill pads permitted. And then finally, you probably saw just yesterday, we put out a second news release on our drilling at the FG Gold Project. We've now moved up into British Columbia in the Caribou region of BC, which is just outside of Williams Lake. We're just to the south of Barkerville, which is a Cisco's camp, Spanish Mountain. We're just off the one end of Mount Poly and Gibraltar mines. So very prolific mining jurisdiction, low altitude, road accessible. This doesn't need helicopters. You can drill at really reasonable costs. And what we have here is a 1 million ounce at surface deposit drilled by several operators in the 80s and 90s, drilled as a bulk disseminated deposit. But what we believe is really a higher grade vein controlled deposit. And you can see that in the existing data. So we've gone back in, we're drilling through the higher grade parts of the known mineralization, trying to upgrade those by using metallic screen assaying techniques, which allow you to better analyze the coarse gold and visible gold in this deposit and make new discoveries at depth. Our news release 2 days ago had showed good progress and success on both of those objectives. We're upgrading the historic fire assay method by 10 to 48% over fire assays by doing the metallic screens. We made a new discovery of a new vein at depth. I think we drilled 10 meters of 3.9 grams per ton in that vein below known mineralization. So everything's shaping up to be something that we should keep spending money on and keep drilling. We've got 6 more holes in the can at the lab that we'd expect a news release on in the coming weeks. The drill will start turning after winter breakup sometime later in June after the 15th. And we expect to see a continuous string of great drill holes coming out of FG, through the course of the summer. So again, the objective of Core is to, show that this project has merit, upgrade the resource to a higher grade. And if we do, we open up a whole district scale land package with 20 kilometers of strike to exploration and having yet a third quality project inside Core Mining. So taking that all back in a circle, there's a lot of exploration activity going on in the company. We're drilling the FG Gold Project. We're permitting pads at Long Valley and Imperial to test some great low-hanging fruit on those projects. In parallel to that, we're working on the plant operations, which will kick off permitting of Imperial here in the next month or two, getting great feedback on the ground in Imperial County from the politicians and local stakeholders. And we're super excited about the prospects for Core in this going forward. Back to you, Jimmy. What about some serious more questions?
Do you mind just flipping back to that last slide, please? So it looks like, so the drilling's going to start at FG, and then it looks like in order to get the permits in California, it might take a little bit longer. Is it tougher to get permitting in California than it is in British Columbia?
Actually not really. It took us about 4 months to get our permits. We were actually surprised, to be frank, how slow BC was. We were expecting to do that FG drilling before the winter, actually, originally in November. So BC did take quite a while to permit because you have to go through an Indigenous consultation on your drill pads. The process in the United States is more mechanical, where you have to go through make sure that you've cleared biologically and archaeologically any pads that you're going to use or land you're going to disturb, and that you are going to reclaim those sites when you're gone. So it's more of a mechanical process that takes time at both the Forest Service and the BLM for our drill pads. So no, actually it doesn't take longer. So we're thinking 3 to 5 months at both the Imperial and Long Valley, which was similar to what it took to permit FG.
So we touched a little bit on CAs earlier. Somebody just shot me an email. They want to know, how many CAs have you signed?
It depends on the time frame, so I'm not going to comment directly on a number. Since the PEA, probably have signed somewhere in the 5 to 10 range. Now that's not all with other mining companies. Some of those are with companies looking for to be strategic investors in the company. We've got people interested in individual assets, so we're being approached on a regular basis for earn-ins on our BC projects, on Imperial or on Long Valley. And certainly we want to make sure that we've got as many options on the table as we can, as we look at what capital we have available, because we could spend a lot more money hitting these drill projects and exploration projects really hard. Right now we're just hitting the lowest hanging fruit and being prudent with the capital we have to really just wave our arms about the Core is way cheaper than our peers, and we need to change that by making people aware of the story.
So once again, we touched on the capital at the beginning of the presentation. You have $5 million. How are you going to spend that in the coming months?
Right. So the first priority for capital clearly is Imperial permitting. We're putting in our plant operations, and in my mind, we've earmarked a couple $1 million of that to keep both the strong balance sheet and fund Mark to get the plant operations in. We're going to spend probably at most another 500 grand on the drilling at FG Gold to do another, but it's going to be success basis. If we're getting some amazing results, we'll obviously look to plus minus to spend a few $100,000 more to keep that drill turning. That'll give us another 8 to 10 holes out of that project. And then I would say whichever comes first, either Long Valley or Imperial, from a permitting perspective, we'd spend another $1 million in drilling to make sure that we want to have a drill turning in this company at all times, and generating lots of good excitement in the market about Core's assets.
Okay, well, just one other question here. It has to do with the valuation. You showed a slide earlier, and it was very inexpensive to its comps. And
Yep.
So someone sent in a question. They're saying, all things being equal, what is the valuation gap if fully permitted? So I think he means to say is, if you were to get your permits tomorrow, where do you think Core would trade to?
Yeah, so I'll do some quick mental math on that. So, and it really depends on how you value exploration. But let's just focus on purely on the PEA, ounces that were in that PEA. So that would have if you use today's exchange rate, about a $500 million net asset value. A gold project will typically trade at NAV or close to NAV once it's permitted. So that would imply a $500 million market cap for Core, and 100 million shares. You'd expect $5 Canadian would be a logical numbers you'd run on that front. So those are the types of returns we're looking for. to take Craycore forward. That's the value creation potential to get some of that value in our market cap and per share value going forward.
Okay, great. And I just got one other question here that was sent in. How much drilling has been done from the Glamis days, and what has been the history of Imperial after Glamis?
Yeah, so Glamis drilled, I gotta get my numbers to 349, largely except for 2 vertical RC holes. They were, if you go back into when Glamis was working this project, they actually bought it from Goldfields, who was the owner and operator and builder of Mesquite at the time and controlled most of the ground in the district. They were operating the Picacho mine at the other end of our regional land claims, and they were running low on ore. So they were looking at Imperial as a way to continue operations in Imperial County and backfill the loss of production they were going to see at Picacho. So they drilled the deposit over 3 seasons, did a feasibility in 1996. And, because of that, they just drilled enough ounces to, generate economics to start a mine. And they left a lot of exploration opportunities on the table as a result of that, because they just did vertical RC. They didn't care about structure, didn't care about why it was there. They just drilled down dip, down dip, down dip, either got too deep or they missed, and they just stopped, step out, do it again. Boom, 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 as fast as you can mechanically pattern drill. So they've left a lot of opportunity on the table. Glamis basically shelved the project with the backfill law and low gold price in 2002. The project, if you recall, Glamis went on to become Goldcorp. And in fact, the executives that at the time were in Glamis were Chuck Jeunesse and Kevin MacArthur. Chuck went on to become the CEO, as we know, of Goldcorp. And the project sat dormant in Goldcorp. They paid the claim fees right up until 2017.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think there's some emotional attachment for sure to old Glamis guys. They all kind of cut their teeth there and got fried. And I think they were just sitting on the project. And when Garofalo came in and Chuck left, Garofalo was like, "What's this thing?" and just sold it. And that's where Core was in the right place at the right time.
Very good. Okay, we're at 40 minutes, Scott. Why don't you take 2 minutes to tell the audience why they should invest in Core Mining, and also give us upcoming catalysts and what we should expect to see in the coming weeks and months.
All right. So really quickly, why am I a shareholder of Core, and why do I love this company? 2 things to drive value, right? We have gold in the ground, and we've got a PEA, which with real valuation metrics. So first argument for why Core is a good equity is fundamental valuation. We are cheaper than our peers, and I think that creates a lot of logic why we can move this company into becoming institutional grade. We currently have no large institutional investors in the name, so there's a great opportunity as we grow to get this company up to where it should be from a valuation perspective. We do that by generating news flow, and we've got supportive strategic investors in Eric and Macquarie that have put in 2 rounds of financing to keep drills busy and to keep news flow coming in the coming months. You can know, though, that we as shareholders of the company and members of management and the board are side by side with you, the individual shareholder, because we want per share price appreciation. This is not about empire building. It's not about flying around to fancy conferences in Miami and going out for expensive dinners. I want per share value increase. I don't make a lot of money working at Core. I make money because I own the company. And then finally, your point on catalysts. So, the next big couple news releases are going to be exploration oriented. You're going to see the final 6 holes from the FG drill program that are, in the lab for metallic screens. Very excited to see those probably in 2 or 3 weeks. We're mobilizing a follow-up program on Imperial regional exploration, doing geophysics and ground sampling in the washes, which are the dry downstream rivers where there's historic placer gold mining. And that's really just making sure we keep targeting on that regional exploration project and picking the highest priority structures to go get that drill turning in the fall. Soon after that, I'd expect to see permitting from one of those 2 projects in California, mobilization of drilling, submission of the Imperial plan of operations, all of that heading into fall, which is typically good market for gold in the Denver Gold Show and Beaver Creek and all of the excitement in the gold sector. So I think we got a good plan to keep the news flow coming for the full balance of 2020 at least.
Well, that's great. That was a great presentation, Scott. Thank you very much for taking the time. To all the attendees, I want to thank you for signing in. We do appreciate it. If anybody would like a copy of that core market report, by all means, shoot me an email, info@bloorstreetcapital.com. And if anyone would like to have a more in-depth discussion on core mining with Scott, let me know and I will set it up. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jimmy.